We'll kick it off first and just introduce ourselves, and then we'll dive in and talk about community, digitally and IRL. So my name is Mark Robinson, here from Seattle. We're actually all from Seattle, which is fun. Founder of NFT Seattle, so put together an event similar to this out in the Northwest. And then I've also worked on marketing and community building with a couple of projects. So over to you guys.
Thank you. I'm Marylee Burman. I am also from Seattle. I work in Google on Web3 startup programs, and I also have a little side hustle doing photography, and I've sold a few collections, and I've minted a few things, so just dabbling with the startup and creative space in Web3. We're super stoked to be here, and thanks for coming. I know there's a lot of stuff going on at this conference, and you chose to be here, so we appreciate that.
Right on. My name is Morgan Zion. I'm the CEO of Alpha Girl Club, also an independent artist and a yoga instructor. I do a lot of wellness stuff, and that is part of what obviously we're going to be talking today about creating community, building more of an IRL connection and community involvement. So yeah, you could have been anywhere else, but you're here, right? Quality, not just quantity. All right.
Awesome. So community is obviously a big buzzword in Web3, so we'll start off just kind of by defining, like, what is community? Why is that so important? Why is that such a key part of Web3? So we'll start there and then dive a little deeper on how we actually go about building that. Marylee, would you like to kick us off on that one?
on building Web3?
Kind of defining what community is, why it's so important, why is that such a critical piece of Web3?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I feel like because of a lot of the Web3 stuff is so bespoke and we're all sort of building it on our own, there's not like a lot of typical platforms. So it feels like you're using your community to be able to sell your stuff and get your work out there. And like building that community are the people that ultimately support you and the people that care about you the most. So it's super critical that you have a good community that you can leverage when you don't have like all these other baked in tools, because Web3 changes so fast that you have to be able to keep that really tight. Yeah.
Is it my turn? Yeah, you know, and to echo what Marylee said, I find that because Web3 is always changing and your community is constantly shifting, it's recognizing the people that are around for you, because they're the ones who know you and they want to know more about you. They're invested because they care, rather than a lot of people are just going to be coming in, they're going to try and make that fast buck and get in and get out. And it's not that they're not important either, but recognizing that that's always going to happen, right? So if you're fostering and feeding your community that does care about you, not only will you be more fulfilled, but they're going to feel more fulfilled, because that is the connection that at the end of the day really does matter. They're the people who buy your art and they're stoked and they're so excited that they get to hold that piece that you made, because that's a connection with you as the artist.
Yeah, I think something that is really cool about Web3, people sometimes see it as like emerging tech and, you know, advancing away from human connection and being like super tech focused with the metaverse and all that stuff. But I feel like in Web3, the brands that do the best to bridge human connection are the ones that are actually winning. And so I think community is a huge part of that. And really, the ethos of Web3 is not a couple powers that be to like do everything. It's the community coming together and everybody building together, participating, collaborating, and like playing a part in doing that. So I think it's really like ingrained in the fabric of what Web3 is. So talking about some online strategies, I know Marylee has done an awesome job of that, so I'm going to kick it to her first. But we want to dive in a little bit and talk about like what strategies have been really effective in building online community, and then we'll shift into like bridging the gap and doing the same thing IRL as well.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, with some of the online communities, I think there's like all these different platforms, right? Like there's Instagram, and mostly in Web3 is Twitter. So I did a shift from Instagram to Twitter, and I found that that was a much better niche for me. It just feels like a place where you can put more of your work out there versus like something like Instagram. It's the guidance there is to stick to a niche and do things consistently the same time every day. And that's not really a mold for an artist. Like if you're an artist, you just kind of want to do whatever you want to do. And Twitter allows you a space to do that because you can do shit posts, you can do like beautiful photography, you can drop little words of wisdom, and it doesn't really stay in a gallery that is like almost feels very static. And just that consistency of constantly always being supportive of your friends, having work that you're putting out there, and a lot of that content that you're putting out has to have some type of a meaning to it. And that's like what gets people to see your stuff because it gets more reach because people like it. And then people stick around because you're consistent and you're giving them things that they find are useful or things that they, might ultimately want to purchase. Like when I did my first photo collection, every day, same time, I did a little hint of like what was coming. And I didn't know how that was going to work out, but then when the collection launched, it sold before I could even, I actually set the time wrong, so it sold out before I did my launch space. But we're all learning. But
it's a good problem.
Yeah, consistency and just supporting your friends just as much as you care about yourself, I think is also really important.
Just to like piggyback on that, she is so inspirational, is she not? Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever you say. And that is exactly why I love community so much. I was in Instagram mode, like, all the time. I'm like, okay, what's the trends? What's this? What's the hashtags? What I gotta do? What do I gotta make? And it was crazy because there was sometimes growth and other times not. And I remember reaching out to Marylee being like, dude, like what is going on? Like, is it me? Does my art suck? Am I not personable? Like, what's going on? And she's like, girl, if you want to build a community right now, you need to start shifting. You need to start thinking about going onto Twitter, basically what she just told you guys. Did you all just get Twitter just now? Yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's what I did. I was like, okay, that's my new strategy. And so it was really nice to kind of let that go, let Instagram, not that I've like completely dropped off, but I've just noticed that I'm lighter, it's not so serious. I'm not following any trends. I'm just sharing with the community that seems to now care about me. And that's totally fine. It does not mean I'm not a good artist. It doesn't mean that people don't care about me. I'm just shifting where I'm spending my energy and my time and noticing, just like what Marylee was saying, sometimes you can do a shit post and it's all good because the next one that comes is gonna be you saying GM, And it's just that really lovely way of connecting with your community that takes off the pressure for you to have the most perfect post, which is exactly what it feels like with Instagram many times. So not getting stuck and being able to shift is really important.
So I'm curious, you said you sold out your project before you'd even officially launched it. How did you, from zero to getting to a point where your community is that strong, how did you tactically, what did that look like to build that?
That's a great question. I leveraged my own community. So what I was kind of giving a nod to before is I almost care about the people that I follow more than I care about what I'm doing. I took this Dale Carnegie class a long time ago, and the one thing that I remembered from his tips was, always speak in terms of other people's interests. And so I'm always feeding into that. And I think because I was, supporting all these other people, when it came my turn, they were all very apt to want to support me as well. And I just had a lot of feedback. I put grids together, and people that I knew had done collections. I was like, what do you think about this? And I just leveraged that community that I had spent so much time building. But the number one piece of advice that I got when I was entering the space was, you can't just come in hot. I don't care how many Instagram followers you are, what your name, who you are. You can't just come onto Twitter and think that you're gonna drop a collection and it's gonna sell out, because people don't care. It's all about those connections that you've made. And so I just spent months just observing and pouring into other people and being super supportive. So then when it was my turn, they lifted me. And I did those little hints every day of coming soon. And I did a little sizzle video. And I just stayed consistent. And on OpenSea, it was there was some kind of time zone fluke. And I was about to go into my space an hour later, and I start getting all these emails of sold, and I was like, oh shit, okay, this is a sellout party, that's great. But yeah, it was a really fun experiment, and that's what's so cool about Web3 is that everything is so experimental, and you can really just fail fast, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to sell out or not or whatever, but as long as you feel good about what you're doing, that's what really makes it fun. Yeah.
It's awesome. Talking about IRL, we'll shift to that a little bit because, so putting together NFT Seattle last year, that was an in-person conference out in the Northwest, connecting a lot of people. And in Seattle, there's a lot of like inspiring, innovative people like these two, like a lot of others in our community, like Dan and Emil and Andrea over there. Seattle's got a lot of really impressive people and talent, but it's kind of a quiet city where people are in their own lane, building their own thing. They're not as loud as like a New York or a LA or Miami. And so the vision for that was getting people together and let magic happen. But also you don't just throw good people in a room and hope that they connect and magic happens. Like there's work that goes into facilitating that, actually making sure that meaningful connections are had and that kind of stuff. And there's been a lot of fruit from that. Like Dan, shout out to Dan over at T-Mobile. But they brought a community to our event, and then afterwards, like they've continued to build upon that without our involvement, but they built like inside of their business, they've built a whole innovation team with Emil that's like teaching people about Web3, which is really awesome. And they're actually hosting a Web3 event in Seattle next week. And so, is it next week? 2 weeks? Next week? Okay. But it's really cool to see how like in-person inspires other like people to build on, whether it's our event or not. It's like connections happen in person that are really powerful and meaningful, and then it turns into this like network effect, this butterfly effect. I know Morgan's done a lot of in-person events. I've showed up to some of her in-person yoga out in Seattle for Alpha Girl Club holders, which has been awesome. So maybe talk about how that's going.
Absolutely. First of all, you want to hear something cool? I know you do. Okay. So
I do.
So what's funny is we met through her boyfriend who has been doing yoga with me in Seattle for the last like 10 years. And they started dating. She came to my yoga class and I was like, she's cool. And then you guys were like friends, you know? And then Mark and I met through Alpha Girl Club. And since I was hosting yoga for Alpha Girl Club, Mark came, we connected, Twitter, all of a sudden, here we are. We're in New York. We all live in the same area code. What? You know, and that's the power of organic connection in real life. It's different than when you're hitting up somebody on Twitter that you've never seen, you've never had a moment with, you've never had an actual interaction. So there's a lot of power in that. But it also is generationally very important to recognize what community you're trying to tap into and then how to bridge the gap between what their experience is in real life and what your perceived experience is in real life. I love people. Go figure. You know, I love being in person. I love collaborating and building. And my background is in user experience design, where you observe a lot of patterns and demographics, and you are able to recognize that some people go a certain path and others go a certain path, and you need to figure out how to get them to come back together, right? So in this new world of Web3, many people are on Discord all day long. And with the market constantly going up and down and people are just chasing money, there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of depression and anxiety. The last thing that most people want to do is what? Get up and get outside and go connect with other people. So part of what Alpha Girl Club and myself are doing is bridging the gap. We already have a really lovely community of people, and we wanted to say, hey, you know, we want to build a utility to support your wellness, mental health. So we want you to be able to talk about what's going on in your life and give you some resources. But what we found is people are still behind their screens. So to get them to come into real life and build connections with each other, we started hosting these yoga events. And it would be very like light beginner yoga followed by an exercise of mindfulness. So one in particular, themed every month, by the way, one was a New Year's resolution. But rather than a resolution, it was a New Year's intention. So not something that you're just gonna like, oh, all of a sudden. It's more like, what do you wanna do this year? What's important to you? Not like, what is your new job? But like, how do you wanna feel? We had everybody write that down. And then everybody who came, which was a sold out event, everybody who came had to talk, you know? And that's really uncomfortable for most people, but I swear to goodness, once somebody started talking and then the next person started talking, there was this like weight that was like off their shoulders. And everybody was like, wow, that was really powerful. I got to speak my truth. And then the next event came around and everybody showed up and it just kept going. And then we're here now trying to get people to move in a similar way. And it's not that easy. And again, quality, not quantity when it comes to these events. You might show up and 2 people come, but guess what? They'll come to your talk and you'll get an opportunity to have a deeper connection, right? So, long story short, quality, it matters. Being in person, it matters. You never know who you might talk to.
Yeah, and I think there's something deeper about an in-person connection a lot of times than just a digital connection. Walking over here, there was somebody I met actually in the elevator at my hotel to walk over here, and she had like the Nouns glasses on, right? So I was like, oh, you're part of Nouns now, that's awesome. She gave me her card, and then as I was walking over here, I went to follow her on Twitter, and we were both following each other already. But you don't always know because people have the profile pictures and what, so I sent her a message, and I was like, hey, no way, we're actually following each other, but great to meet you in person, that's cool. But now it's somebody that I could actually reach out to, and there's a connection there versus before. I didn't even know who this was, and like, yeah, I could cold slide in the DMs to say what's up or ask something, but now there's like a actual bond and connection. So I think IRL is really powerful, and it's easier to scale a audience and a community digitally because you can get 100,000 followers on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, but when you have those select in-person IRL handshake, hug connections, it's so powerful, and that is like, it can open doors that just a connection on Twitter or something doesn't happen. And I think with Web3 being such a niche, it's really like the connections you can have right now with this being such a small world, give it 10 years and you're not unique by being in this space anymore. Right now, so many people are accessible, and so it's like a critical time that if you're looking to scale your brand or just make connections, building community right now is a really like unique opportunity, I think, because we're so early. So one question I have, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Morgan, specifically. But once you have let's say you've scaled a community, you've got an audience, a community, and you've built that, how do you actually keep it sticky? Like, how do you keep people around, keep people engaged? And I know you stepped into CEO role and were part of Alpha Girl Club, and then kind of, it's like, okay, now there's this big community. How do I keep it growing? How do I like pour into that? So I'm curious, how do you keep a community going once you've got it built?
Great question, because I'm still working on it, honestly, if I'm truly being honest. Because I find that the way that I do things in real life doesn't always translate to Discord, right? So we actually have a community member, her name's Kitty. She's fantastic for Alpha Girl Club, and she's keeping that community going. I'll get on there like once or twice a week and just say an announcement or give a couple GMs, a good emoji, but I know that's not enough. But I can only scale myself so far. It's only one of me and a bunch of holders, 5,500 to be exact. And not everybody is engaged as they used to be when the market was popping. But part of what is so helpful for continuing to foster that community is recognizing what they truly want and then offering them things that are not just free. Because everybody wants free stuff, right? If I send everybody a free t-shirt, will they be happy? Yes, for 5 minutes. Then they're going to want something new, and they're going to want something else. And so we're trying to develop strategies around connecting through not just free swag, right, that they're going to recycle and need another one soon, but we want experiences. And everybody knows that memories are the things that you cannot buy with just money. So if you are a holder, we're thinking, we're giving you free memories. You want that? Most people do, right? We're going to give you an opportunity to connect to somebody in a different way. You're not just going to have cocktails and then forget about that conversation. You're going to breathe with somebody else. You're going to have this most memorable connection that you leave and you're like, wow, I feel kind of different. But again, I'm still figuring it out. Our team is still figuring it out. So stick around, maybe follow us and see how that goes, Buy an alpha. Marylee, what do you think about that? Because we've talked a lot about that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I'm still working toward like bridging the gap on my own for like community into IRL. But I just always try to find like meaningful connections and be intentional when I'm with people in real life. And the thing that was standing out while you guys were talking for me was the first time I went to an NFT event. It was ETH Denver last year. Did I get COVID? Yes. Was it worth it? Maybe.
Debatable.
But it was just, I had never been so stoked, and I don't know if it was because we were all in lockdown, then all of a sudden we finally all got to like see each other in real life. But a friend of mine, another photographer, Dave Krugman, he has this company called All Ships, and he just does these epic parties. And he brings all these people together, and it was just like all these handles that I'd seen on Twitter, they were all there in real life. And I could hug them and talk with them, and it was this art gallery display, and you make those connections, and next thing I know, like the next event, my artwork's in the gallery because I made somebody feel good or laugh or whatever. Like we had these like actual connections that then like took me to the next level. And I was like feeling so fulfilled. Like, you know, you could have 100,000 followers on whatever platform, but it doesn't feel like meaningful as it does like when you're in this space. Like that party probably had like 200 people and I was stoked. So like you think like, oh, I don't have a lot of followers, it's only like 1,000 followers, but imagine all those people in a room.
Oh,
you don't have time to like talk to all those people.
Totally.
You have time to like give yourself to like a room of like 5 people and have it be meaningful. But anyway, that was my first experience with it, and that was what I was thinking about, was like being here in New York, and just like the fact that you all are here is so meaningful, and like you're all very attentive, and we appreciate that. And it's like, you know, who knows what's gonna happen? It's just way better, but you need both. That's the bottom line. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, one thing we did at our event was we had like a bingo where you could find different people at the event that had different things, because you mentioned, I think, social anxiety and like being scared to share and whatnot, and how do you get people involved in having conversations versus just sitting in the back of a room listening to speakers talk, because that is not that memorable of an experience. Even if it's an amazing talk, it's like maybe you get inspired, but you remember it more when it's like a meaningful connection and you actually have a heartfelt like conversation with somebody. So yeah, I think those were all really good points. Let's talk about some people that are doing an amazing job at this. I'll share 2 people that come to mind that I see doing a great job building community. One is Gabe Weiss. Do you guys know Gabe Weiss, the artist? Some of you guys probably do. He's got the Stoics as one of his collections. He just launched one called Friends. He's a Cuban artist. I don't know how to call it, but that kind of art where it's like geometric figures and whatnot.
Oh, not from Cuba.
Not from Cuba.
Just making sure.
But he does a lot of stuff. Like he's super active on Twitter with Twitter Spaces and all of that, and has built up a good following on Instagram and Twitter and all the platforms. But in person at all the events, he gives so much of himself by sketching his little Stoic pieces and giving those to people and taking pictures with people. And then I've seen him do this. He did it at our event. He did it in LA a few weeks ago. He's doing a live painting tonight as well, and it's probably going to be something similar, where people from the community all get to contribute to this canvas, and then he'll paint a piece over it. And then now everybody feels like they contributed and they're a part of his artwork and they're a part of his community. And so I'm so connected to Gabe. Like I'm a holder of a handful of his pieces, but at the same time, I've got his like painting that he did of our community at the event that he painted over. And it's way deeper than just this cool art piece. It's like, oh man, I'm like a part of this. And there's thousands of people that feel the same way, because he does this at all the events and he brings the community along with him versus just showing up and speaking and doing art by himself. He like involves people. So I think that's really valuable. And then Ray Isla is a music artist that I think she does an amazing job building community too. If you guys don't know her, check her out and watch how she does it. But yeah, is there anybody else you guys have seen that have done an amazing job other than yourselves?
I think Farouk has done good with the Rug Radio stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, Dave Krugman does a great job with his IRL events through All Ships. Yeah. Just quick plug for Morgan. She's doing the meditation space over in, what room is that?
In the Artist Village. At 2:30, it'll be Breathe and Stretch. So
It's a cool spot.
it's pretty cool. So come and breathe and stretch. It's exactly what it sounds like, breathing and stretching. So
There's cool pillows on the ground.
that is true. And good vibes. And those are free. There you go. I know it's time. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate your time and energy. And, give us a follow. Mark Eth.
MarkRob.eth.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not up here. And then Marylee, her art is flippin' phenomenal if you haven't seen her photography. And then myself, Morgan Zion _ and Alpha Girl Club. And John right here is our artist. So thanks again for being here, y'all.
Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
so much.